All right, welcome everybody back to Panjo Creations' second podcast of the incredible journeys of Phil Wolter to the very remote station of Mawson on the continent of Antarctica. This episode we'll be looking at the voyage to Mawson from Australia. And most people think, oh, it's just straight down, straight south from, say, Perth or Melbourne, but it's actually not. It's quite a long, long way to go. So over to Phil. When did you leave? What was the leaving date?
December the 8th, 1975.
And that's from?
We left from the docks in Melbourne. Now, nowadays you leave from Hobart, but in those days it was Melbourne.
Yeah, you think it's Hobart's closer to Antarctica, isn't it?
Well, you'd think so. Thing is, the way the great circles work on the surface of the Earth, you actually end up travelling from Melbourne to Mawson, heading pretty much due west, slightly south of west. And the effect of that makes Hobart and Melbourne almost the same distance to Mawson.
Let's talk about how the distance between Melbourne and Mawson. You said that Mawson's actually due south of Madagascar, so we're talking quite a few thousand kilometres, aren't we?
We are,
okay,
yes.
So what's the distance we're talking about?
It was about 6,300 kilometres.
6,300 kilometres.
Yeah.
That's a long way.
Yeah, well, that's if you go in a straight line or following a great circle around the Earth. It was actually more like 6,500 kilometres the way we sailed.
A direct trip to Mawson. It wasn't going to Macquarie Island. It wasn't going to Casey Base. It was just directly to Mawson.
Yes. Straight from Melbourne to Mawson with a little bit of scientific stuff thrown in on the way down.
No, you didn't stop in Perth, Fremantle?
No.
Okay, so well, that's all right. And what sort of, so you're on a ship. Is it a big ship? How big is the ship? Is it a couple of thousand tons?
I can't remember the weight of it, but it's not a big ship. It's an ice strengthened hull. Mm-hmm. Saying that it's a small ship, it's just amazing what fitted onto that thing.
You know, I think I read that they've 3 helicopters.
Yes.
And a fixed wing aircraft. What is it?
Yeah, a Pilatus Porter.
Right. So they pulled the wings off, I assume.
That's right.
Okay, just checking. And obviously the expedition crew, which was how many people were on the trip?
There was half of there's 39 people. There'd be about 20 expeditioners. Plus there's all the summer crew, which is another 40 or 50 or something. What else? 2 army larks. Very big vehicles strapped on the side. Mm-hmm. And you had all the building material to put up 2 buildings at Mawson, the fuel for Mawson.
For a year.
Yeah. There's so much stuff on that boat. It was riding very low in the water that particular year. Which
would probably give you a bit of a worry when you're thinking, hang on, we're going into the Southern Ocean, the roughest ocean in the world, and this thing's lying a bit low in the water.
But, well, we didn't think about it.
Well, I suppose also you're being a young, adventurous chap, you think, oh, this is great fun.
Nothing could harm us in those
We're
days.
Indestructible, we could do all
like
that.
the young people of nowadays, we're indestructible.
Right. So you left Melbourne on the way to a Mawson base. How long did it take? I was quite surprised when you did tell me this.
I believe it was 18 days, I think.
18 days?
17 or 18.
Okay, so
might have been 17.
That's quite a long time. That's quite you expect, we're down there about a couple of hours,
yeah.
Or a couple of days.
Remember, well, Nella was able to top 20 knots without too much trouble. But the captain normally kept it on around 12 knots, which is the cruise speed of the boat.
That's a more economical cruising speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so we've left December the
8th
from Melbourne, Victoria.
Yes.
We sail across the Great Australian Bight.
Kind of, yeah.
Sort of on a southerly southwesterly direction.
We're sort of going west-southwest, heading down. And by the time, as we were crossing the Bight, we're a fair way south of it by that time.
Mm-hmm. So, do you notice the weather getting colder? As you've got from summertime in Australia, with your thongs and your shorts and your sunscreen, starting to head further south.
Didn't take too long before we started to feel the cold starting to bite us. Mm-hmm. And I think we're only about 4 or 5 days out when we had our first boat drill.
Oh, okay. Yep. Take us through one of those.
Yeah, so that's if the boat's going to sink, you got to get on lifeboats, or if it catches on fire, you got to get on lifeboats.
Did they have enough lifeboats for the crew and the
Oh,
passengers?
yes.
Okay, because it's not like
Well,
the
we didn't
Titanic.
actually get on them. We had to get into our positions where we would get on them, know exactly what we're doing. And I remember it was cold and sleety, and we still didn't have our sea legs at that stage. So I was feeling queasy, but I managed to hold my food down. But there was a few others who decorated the side of the boats, quite a few of them.
So you said you did that in the first 5 days. I would have thought you'd done that the first day, first 2 days, just to get yourself really, really conditioned to it.
These were Danes we were dealing with.
Okay.
It's a Danish boat.
Right. And that was one of the things I was thinking about when I was reading through the notes is why didn't the Australian government have their own manned boat for these bases, these base resupplies instead of these Danish boats? I couldn't understand that because it's
Well, when Australia started their Antarctic expeditions, this was back in the 60s, you can't say, oh, we need a boat, let's build a boat. And it takes quite some doing to build a polar boat that's capable of withstanding ice. And it's a cargo boat, it's a passenger ship.
Yeah, it's a really multi-purpose
and
boat.
It's not actually an icebreaker, but the Nella has been used for short stints of ice breaking.
Yeah. Now, so first, the other thing is okay, we're on the voyage. You've done your first lifeboat drill. You're thinking, oh, that's important to know. How many bases does Australia have on the Antarctic continent?
We have 3 on the continent.
Yeah.
That's Mawson, Davis and Casey.
Right.
And we have 1 sub-Antarctic base on Macquarie Island.
Right.
Macquarie is a major wildlife refuge south of New Zealand.
Okay, so we're talking about bases that are strung across far across as New Zealand all the way across to Madagascar and the other side of the So that's a huge area to cover, isn't it, in terms of...
It's a massive area to cover. And those bases was much for political purposes as well as scientific research.
Just to maintain a presence on the continent.
Exactly.
And that has to be a continuous presence, don't it? It's like year in, year out. You can't just leave the base for a year, otherwise sort of lose your stake to it.
They were continually manned, and as far as I'm aware, they've been continually manned to this day. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting closer, getting more and more into the Southern Ocean. What's the sort of weather like? I mean, sounds really lovely. Christmas, summertime. It's like a cruise. You're sunbaking on the deck. With your mankinis on.
No, we decided to leave the mankinis.
Okay, thank God.
Mainly because they haven't been invented at that stage.
Sorry, we're talking about the 70s, damn it.
Yes. This is 1975.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
Okay, so we're looking at day 5, day 6. Let's talk me through a sort of roughly a day in the life of on the ship. In that sort of time.
Time travelled very slowly.
Yep.
There wasn't virtually anything to do. I checked on equipment, a few things like that, but it was nothing. Now, when we got further south we got into echo sounding, we had a roster to man the echo sounding equipment.
Yeah.
So
what that was to sense the bottom, to see what was sort of...
Echo sound is just sending sound signals down to the ocean, back up.
Now, what sort of depths were we talking about? I mean, because I'm not sure how deep that is down as you get closer to Antarctica.
I don't know, probably a kilometre between.
Yeah. So sort of really deep stuff.
Now, that's off the top of my head. I can't remember what sort of depths we're actually looking at.
Yeah, because it seems pointless to be echo sounding at, 2,000 miles or 2 miles or whatever it is.
Well, it wasn't just for shipping hazards. It was scientific reasons as well, because each voyage that goes down, they get more data about what the ocean floor looks like. Nowadays, they can do that much easier, but not so back in those days.
So that was echo sounders based on the ship itself.
Yes.
So the ship had a scientific function. It had a transport function. It was a luxury liner. What were your cabins like? I mean, were you bunking with several people at once, or you just had your own special?
No, we were bunking with several others. I think it was 4 to a cabin, if I remember right.
Okay, 4 to a cabin. Were you fed, or did you have to make your own food?
Oh, we were fed all right. The Danish knew how to feed, that's for a catch was sometimes you couldn't eat, a bit queasy in the stomach. But when we got our sea legs, it was fine.
So when you say queasy in the stomach, how many days did it take you to get over your seasickness?
I think by about day 5.
So before that, you'd been chucking up every other 5 minutes.
No, I didn't actually chuck up, surprisingly. But came close a few times.
Yeah.
But by day 4, you're pretty well all right.
You get into the rhythm of the boat, the
That's
movement
right.
of the boat. Okay.
Yeah. It's called your sea legs.
Because when I was reading some of your notes, you said that you had the cabin crew looking after you. You know, you had waiters and you know, I thought, you know, the guy in the penguin suit just coming out. Yes, so what would you like?
No, we didn't have that.
Okay.
Oddly enough.
Well, that's what I thought. I read that anyway.
I think you. Imagination.
It was the Titanic. Sorry, I got to the Titanic.
Got your story.
But you do had stewards, people looking after you, making sure you're fed.
But you went to a mess.
Yeah.
Where you had your feed.
Mm.
And it was an uncanny thing how that boat, which rocked so much, because it was a rounded hull, no stabilisers, which made it better for crushing through ice.
Mm.
It was terrible on the open ocean.
Yeah,
it just rolled so much. And it seemed to roll the maxima right at mealtimes.
Well, of course. That's what you're going to notice the most.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, you've got a round bottom.
30 degrees off vertical is common.
Yeah.
And
that's quite a roll. And is it quite a nice steady roll, or is it sort of quite a slamming? I suppose
most
that's
of
the
the
slamming
time
is fun.
it was nice and rhythmic.
Yeah.
And it would vary in amplitude. Sometimes it'd go a little way, and then you might get a roll that went right over. That was always just when the waiters, Danish waiters,
yeah, that's what
had a great big pile of dishes on their hand. They were pretty good at keeping vertical while the boat was going all over the place. There was hardly a time when you're in the heavy swells where those poor old Danish waiters didn't have a major smash.
So here you are, a young man in his 20s, early 20s, who's probably never been to sea before in his life. You know, you're from Newcastle. You might have gone paddling in the sea a couple of times, but here you are on an ocean vessel heading to an unknown continent, and thinking, "What the hell am I doing?"
Occasionally, that thought did cross your mind.
You know,
but that was overtaken by the feeling of adventure. I'm doing something quite new.
And I suppose that time you were sort of making friends with your people who you were going to spend the next 12 months with. So you're getting to know the rest of your...
You're getting to know some of them quite well. Not all of them, of course. That was later in the year. Yeah.
So you're one bunch who went over at this time, December. So, and you replaced another group who returned home around the same time.
Yeah. The sequence back in those days, we went to Mawson...
Yep.
With half of our crew.
Yep.
And then half of the previous year's crew would then come back onto the ship, and they would go back, not to Perth, but to Fremantle, which saved quite a bit of travelling time for the boat.
Well, yeah.
And they didn't have to do a major load. That had already been done. So it was just transferring crew and maybe some food and bits of odds and ends like that.
And then they would return back to...
Then straight back. Or, in this case, I believe they went to Davis first and then across to Mawson.
Okay. So it's quite a process, isn't it? These places got to resupplied with people, food and fuel on a regular annual basis. Yeah. But they've got to be able to survive for over a year unsupplied, isn't it? Because once the weather gets in, they can't get down there.
That's right. Yeah. And yes, it is a major operation to do all that.
Mm. Did they have 2 ships in the fleet, or was it?
They did. There was 2. It was a twin ship to the Nella Dan. Was the Thala Dan, or Thala Dan, Thala. It was
Thala Dan.
Yeah, also a Danish boat.
Yep.
It's a bit smaller than the Nella, but the 2 of them had been manning, servicing the Antarctic bases since the 60s.
So we're in 76. So over nearly 10 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that those boats were going for 76. What year did the Nella sink? 82, I think. Okay,
so they were going for a good 20 years.
Yes, there was a long stint with those boats.
All right.
And the Nella then was replaced by the Aurora Australis, which has only just been decommissioned
That's
recently.
Correct. To another Nile, what it's called, the new one. All right, so we have into an 19-day trip. We're getting further and further south. It's getting colder and colder. What's the weather starting to do now? I mean, are we starting to get some serious storms happening?
Yes.
Okay.
We do get serious.
Because this is what we expect to have in the Southern Ocean. Massive storms. It's never a quiet.
Yeah. Well, you cross the mooring 40s, northern.
Just 40 degrees south of the equator.
And then you get to the screaming 50s where aptly named because it really is wild.
Yeah.
And when the storms come, they really come. And we had one particular day where it was really stormy. I think we had to actually heave to with the boat.
Just to ride it out.
Ride it out.
Because I suppose you're going south-westerly, you're getting a bit of a waves across the side of the boat.
Yeah.
As opposed to having it going straight into it.
Yeah, so that's why you heave to wait out a major, major storm. This day we did. I remember waking up and I thought, we are in a big storm.
Yeah, because would you be strapped into your bed at night, or was it just sort of, you
No,
got a bit of a rail on the side?
You got quite large rails, actually.
But you'd be rolling around and saying,
that happened.
God.
Yeah, that happened. You'd roll from one side of the bed to the other all the time.
Wow.
When I woke up this morning, I thought, I am going to be so sick today. But then I got up and I thought, I'm going to have to get some photos of this day. So I grabbed my brand new duty-free bought Pentax, which I had used a few times on the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started going all over the place taking photos. Even got the movie camera out and took a few more. So on that, I got a few shots. But the amazing thing is, I just didn't feel seasick. My mind was so.
Yeah, but you're out in the wind as well. You're out in the wind. It's cold.
Yeah, you don't get as seasick when you can see the horizon.
That's correct. Yeah.
But I just didn't feel it at all. I was so taken up with what I was doing.
And that's another thing. Is obviously when you're busy focusing on something, you're not, like you said, you're outside. You're focused on something, and you're not. It doesn't sort of. You're not in a cabin where you've got your vertigo starts to go really overboard.
Exactly.
And you're focusing on something. So, I mean, did you have to walk around with safety harnesses so you didn't fall overboard?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
But I did something rather foolish. The day before, the choppers had been flying, so the safety nets around the chopper deck were down. So I thought you could probably get some pretty good shots from the chopper deck. So I went on the chopper deck. Big mistake, as I found out. Right at that moment, a really big swell hit and the boat started going over and over and over and over.
Oh, so it's going sideways, yep.
Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to go over the edge. The boat had just tipped over and over, and I really thought the soles of my feet, of my shoes, were not going to be able to grip that deck, and over I'd go. Fortunately, they did. But I was off that thing just as quick as he could go. Tell you, Pete, there are a lot of things that happen on that boat going down. With storms, ice, midnight sun, and magnificent, almost, sunsets. We manned the echo sounder in shifts. Then a really amusing thing happened, at least we thought it was. We watched as the choppers placed a tracking transponder on a chosen iceberg. It's meant to track its path over the life of the iceberg. Well, we absolutely marvelled when someone forgot to turn on the transponder. A whole day was wasted searching for and not finding the instrument among all the thousands of icebergs. Can you believe it?
So it had a reasonable flight deck. Did it have a hangar as well for the helicopters to be stored in?
No hangar on the boat. They were just strapped down solid.
Oh, wow. So you got the helicopters sitting on the back. And these were fairly small helicopters, weren't they?
Hughes 500s.
Yeah, so fairly small.
Yeah.
They're strapped down. The boat is tilting and yawing like a drunken whale.
So and imagine they're thoroughly strapped down.
So this character here is out there with his cameras, not just one, but two cameras, trying to hold on and take these photographs of these mountainous seas.
Like I said, we were young and indestructible.
Wow. Because I suppose, did you actually practice a man overboard drill when you were doing your training?
I don't recall doing that.
Because we used to practice it where we just throw a buoy over and you do a figure of eight and try and...
How old was he?
Huh? Oh, the boy, he's probably about 3 metres long.
Oh, right.
No, he's a B-O-U-Y. So how many storms would you have had on the way across?
I think we had 2 major ones. The rest were all minor.
You said minor. So we're talking seas of what? 10 metres?
Yeah, easy.
So there's
and they splash. Now, the viewing deck that you go up was sitting on top of the bridge. That was the highest point on the boat, side of the mast. In those heavy seas, the spray would come right up.
Splosh it.
right across, hit it.
So it was exciting and exhilarating. Wasn't
It was,
Thinking,
yeah.
wow,
Definitely.
we're fighting against the elements here.
Yeah.
This is what the elements are really like. It's serious.
Yep.